We're learning the Sikha in Parshas Shmini, Sikha Beis, and Chelek Yud Zayin, page 100. This is a Sikha in the story of this week's Parsha, when Nadav and Avihu pass away on the day that the Mishkan is built. And there's a Rashi here that discusses the Moshe Rabbeinu telling Mishal and Altzofen to go and take out Nadav and Avihu from the Mishkan. We'll also discuss some other details here in the story later in the Parsha. Nachdem wie die Teire erzählt wegen Misas Nadav Avihu. After the Teire tells us about what happened when Nadav and Avihu passed away. Steht, the Pasuk says, Vayikra Moshe el Mishal vel el Tzofan, Vayomer aleim, Kirvu su'u es achechem me'eis penei ha'kodesh al michutz lamachna. Come, carry your brother out of the Kodesh and take him outside of the Machna. Stellt sich Rashi of the Wörter su'u es achechem und is mefarish. So Rashi stops on these words su'u es achechem v'goymer, and he says, Ka'adam ma'imel ha'chaveirei. This is like a person telling his friend, Haver es hameis melefnei ha'kala. Remove the dead person from in front of the kala. Shleila arve v'sasimcha. In order not to disturb the simcha of the kala. So to here, Moshe Rabbeinu is telling Mishal and Altzofen to take out the bodies of Nadav and Avihu, not to disturb the simcha of the Yidden. From Vanet is the Hechoche. Now, the first thing we need to understand over here is, where is the proof from, as the Amire, Su'u es ha'chechem goymer, that when Moshe tells Mishal and Altzofen, carry out your brother, is given, nit zelieb ze mekaber zu sein. It wasn't just simply telling them, go and take the bodies and bury them. Nor, rather, Moshe was telling them, that the purpose here is not to disturb the joy of the Yidden. Maybe Moshe was simply saying, as other Mefarshim say, take them out, they have to be buried. So the Mefarshim explain this Rashi here, as by Rashi is shver di arichas haloshen su'u me'eis penei ha'kodesh al michutz lamachna. Why does the Torah use this lengthy lashon describing what they should do, saying that they should carry them from outside the Kodesh to from the inside the Kodesh, that is, to outside the Machna? Oib der su'u is nor tzali binyan hakvure, if the point of carrying out Mishal and Altzofen are carrying out Nadav and Avihu just for burying them, hot gedarft stein, the pasuk should have said concisely, su'u es achechem v'kavram, carry out your brother and bury him. Afilim is sagen, as es muss stehen, as the Mokem HaKvurim muss sein, al mechutz lamachna. Even if the Torah has to add those words al mechutz lamachna to tell them, Moshe Rabbeinu is telling them where it is they should be buried. Zenen aber die Werte me'eis penei ha'kodesh berik. But the words me'eis penei ha'kodesh, take them out from inside the Kodesh, they're extra. That's where they were. Obviously, they're inside the Kodesh. So why does the Torah have to say those words? The fon learn to Rashi erais. So from this Rashi learns out, as me'eis penei ha'kodesh is the haupt kavane von su'as ha'chechem. The Torah is writing those words, me'eis penei ha'kodesh, not only to say the location where they were, but that was the purpose. Get them out from this holy place, because here's where the celebration is taking place, and we don't want this to disturb the celebration. Shelo ya'arve v'sasimcha shebemishkan, in Yenem Tag, not to disturb the joy in the Kodesh and the Mishkan on that day. So it's those extra words, me'eis penei ha'kodesh, that Rashi sees that the Torah is telling me not simply to bury them, but Moshe Rabbeinu is telling Mishal and Altzofen to carry them out, to not disturb the simcha that's taking place at that time. Aber der Piris is nicht verstandig. This pshat here in Rashi is not understood. Aleph, number one, Favos stellt sich Rashi of the Werte su'as ha'chechem. If the main words that are bothering Rashi are those extra words of me'eis penei ha'kodesh, so why is Rashi stopping on the words su'u es ha'chechem? Und die Werte me'eis penei ha'kodesh is a blois merames bit v'goymer. And the continuation of me'eis penei ha'kodesh, Rashi only hints by adding v'goymer. Wie bald as the ganze Choch is from the Werte me'eis penei ha'kodesh, if the entire proof of Rashi for his pshat is from these three words, me'eis penei ha'kodesh, hat l'chol ha'reish gedaft meitig sein in dem Dibur HaMaschel die Werte. Those should have been the main words that Rashi should bring from the pasuk if they are the source and the reason why Rashi is saying anything here on these words. Beis, another main question here is Ve'ikir the Adgoshe in Su'u Goymer Me'eis Penei HaKodesh. The emphasis of the pasuk saying, carry out your brother, which is here found in this holy place, is verstandig bepashtus, is actually very obviously and easily understood. It doesn't need any clarification. And the reason is as follows. Der Tzivi Su'u Goymer is nit gewen belois tzlib kvura. Even before you come to Rashi's Pshat, it's understood that Moshe Rabbeinu telling them to carry out Nadav and Avihu wasn't just simply to bury them. Man hat doch gedacht, reisnehmen die Gufim von Nadav and Avihu, bichdei die Tumme soll nicht bleiben im Mishkan. The point of carrying out the dead bodies was that the Tumme should not remain in this holy place, in the Mishkan. Moshe hat es gemusst madgish sein. Moshe had to emphasize this, that we want to get the Tumme out as quickly as possible. Bichdei, das soll getan werden mit Zrizes, so it should be done quickly. Kidei nitzu mashe sein die Tumme in Penei HaKodesh. Not to leave the Tumme of the dead bodies in the Penei HaKodesh for an extra moment. So when it says here, Me'eis Penei HaKodesh, El Michutz Lamachne, there's nothing extra. The Torah is saying, carry out the Tumme from the holy place, that it should not remain there an extra moment. And also, bury them. And where is the burial place? Michutz Lamachne. So what is extra here in the pasuk that Rashi is stopping and explaining and giving us a new pshat, that the Torah is telling us that the purpose of carrying out Nadav and Avihu's bodies was not to disturb the simcha. Bleibt weiter die Scheile, von wann nimmt Rashi the Chiddush, als der Su'u is shaloi la'arve v'sa simcha. In Pirish Rashi Gufe is nit verstandig. Now, besides the general question on what Rashi is coming to address here, where did Rashi take from what he said from the simple pshat of the pasuk, but there's also details that we have to understand in what Rashi actually says. Favos darf Rashi meisiv sein der Moshel ke'odam o'emel ha'chaveiroi haver es hameis melefnei hakala. Why is it necessary for Rashi to give this analogy? Like a person that tells his friend, remove the dead body from the way of the kala. L'chayre is genuk when Rashi sagt bekitzer. Wouldn't it be enough if Rashi would tell us bekitzer, su'u es ha'cheichem v'goyme shalei la'arve v'sasimcha, not to disturb the simcha that's going on. That's all. It's not necessary to have any additional mashal. What is it clarifying? The shaila is noch starker. The question becomes even stronger. Demselben inyan, as man soll nicht ma'arvev sein die simcha, sagt Rashi mit zwei psukim später. The exact same point Rashi says later, two psukim later, benegei dem tzivir shechem al tefro. There, when the Torah says that they should not let their hair grow long like an oval, and dorten sagt der take bekitzer. There, Rashi says concisely, avolatem al ta'arvevu simchasa shel mokim. You do not act like an oval in order not to disturb the joy of the Eibishter. And here Rashi doesn't bring any analogy of a kala, not to disturb the joy of a kala. However, as far as what Rashi says here, two psukim later, we can say, as a falastzich of das ersh gezakte. He's relying on the mashal that he already brought two psukim earlier. But the question becomes, al derech ze gefindt men frie. We already find this earlier. In Seif Parshas Mishpatim, in Pasuk Vayiru es Elikim, is Rashi mefarish nistaklu v'nischayivu misa. At that point, they were already nischayiv to die. Elo shalei ratza kadosh baruch hu la'arviv simchas atayre. The punishment was not at that time because the Eibishter did not want to disturb the simcha of Teire. Brengt nit the mashal. And there Rashi brings no mashal to explain that the Eibishter doesn't want to disturb the Teire, like the analogy of a person that doesn't want to disturb the joy of a kala. Hein, favos darf Rashi in unser Pasuk ankommen zu dem mashal ka'adam ha'imel ha'chaveire chulu. So why over here in our Rashi does Rashi need this mashal? What is this mashal coming to clarify? Was ist da in dem Pasuk, was wir können es nicht verstehen, seiden durch dem mashal? What is it that's unclear about what Moshe is telling them to do to carry out the bodies from the place of the joy, that we have to add this mashal, not to disturb, like the simcha of a kala? Rashi doesn't bring it earlier in Parshas Mishpatim, this mashal. Rashi doesn't bring this mashal later on. Specifically in this pasuk, there has to be a reason why Rashi brings this mashal. Afil as me wird gefunden a hechrich. Was Rashi muss zugleichen dem Minion von Su'es Achechem Meis Penei HaKodesh. Zu Maveres HaMeis V'lefnei HaKala, even if we'll find an explanation and a reason why Rashi must bring this comparison of carrying out the bodies of Nadav and Avihu to the case of removing a dead body from in front of a Kala. Is noch halt nicht verstandig der Arichas Haloshen, but then if we look more specifically into the exact language that Rashi quotes this, Rashi says, Ka'adam ha'omer lachaveirei haver chulu. Like a person that's telling his friend, remove the kala, or remove the mace, that is. Rashi had gekent sagen bekitzer, Rashi could have just said much shorter, Kamoi shemavirin es hameis mulefnei kala. Like one would remove the dead body from the way of the kala. In order not to disturb the simcha, or any similar expression Rashi could have said, omitting the words, Ka'adam ha'omer lachaveirei. Why does Rashi say, like a person that tells his friend? The shaila is noch grosser, the fact that Rashi adds those few words. Ka'adam ha'omer lachaveirei, der Mocker von dem Loschen haveres ameis mulefnei kala. What's the source of this expression that Rashi uses? That you take away the dead body from the place where a kala is in Masechta Ksubis, it's in the Gemara in Ksubis. Und dorten steht es, and there in the Gemara it's brought, nit via maimera oilam, kada maimela chaveira. This is not like some kind of a saying that people say to one another, ada maimela chaveira, nor via din. It's brought there in the Gemara as a halacha. Mavirin es hameis milifnei kala. If there's a mace coming in the way and there's a kala coming, so you put aside the mace in order to allow the kala to pass through. So it's brought there as a halacha. Hein favos es Rashi meisif und durch dem es machlish. As this is not a minik, Rashi adds and he weakens the point, making it sound like it's only some kind of a custom. Ka'adam ha'omer lachaveira. That this is the way people act. This is the behavior of people, that you tell your friend, remove the mace because there's a kala here. It's actually a halacha that's brought in the Gemara. So Rashi should have said, without Adam Mayim Alachaveirei, but that there's a halacha, that since there's a celebration taking place here, and therefore you have to remove the mace. In Medrash, werd gebracht. If you look in the Medrash here that talks about this subject, so there the Medrash says differently. Me'eis penei HaKodesh, ka'adam she'omer lachaveirei, haver hameis hazeh me'eis penei ha'ovel hazeh. Remove, a person tells his friend, remove this dead person from in front of the oval. Ad masai oval zeh mitzdayer. How long will you allow this oval to be in pain from having the mace right in front of him? A zweite gerse, or there's another version there in the Medrash, ka'adam, that says to his friend, milufnei aviv, remove the dead body from in front of the father. Ad masai aviv yirez benoi meis milufonov. Until when will the father have to have the pain of seeing the dead body of his son in front of him? That's the way it's quoted in the Medrash. So we're not talking about a kala, we're talking about an oval or about a father to remove the mace, not to cause any pain to the oval or the father. Und dorten is verstandig, so in the Medrash that actually is understood as das is blois am minigailam, ka'adam maimel hachaveira. It's just a custom in the world. This is the way people do things, because there's no halacha about this, but it's just appropriate behavior, and this is the way people do it. Masha'en kem b'simchas kala is das adin. But when it comes to the simcha of a kala and you encounter a mace on the way, so here it actually is a halacha that you have to remove the mace from the way of the kala. So Rashi is quoting the Gemara, but he's only quoting it as a minig. So that's our question here. So now the Rebbe will explain, so why does Rashi not quote what it says right here in the Medrash on this pasuk? Rashi bringt nicht den Mashal from Medrash. Now the fact that Rashi does not bring it as it's quoted in the Mashal of the Medrash, Ka'adam ha'haver ha'meis me'eis penei ha'ovel, ad masim mitzdayer, that the point there is to remove the dead body from in front of the oval, that he shouldn't have pain of the presence of the dead body. As the sunem the mace is bichdeit, so arabnemen dem tsar, von oval ze, to remove the pain of this oval, val derech ze, ad masay oviv yirechulu lefanov, or in front of a father. Nor rather, what does Rashi here say? Zakt ka'adam ha'omer milufnei ha'kala shaloi la'arve v'sasimcha. Remove the dead body from in front of the kala, not to disturb her simcha. So why does Rashi bring this halacha that it says in the Gemara about a kala, and not what it says right here in the Medrash about removing the dead body from in front of a oval? As das is bichdei, man soll nicht zu sterben, dem simchas a kala. Was hat sich angeheben, noch Eides is given, der Mace, which began before the dead body came. So why does Rashi quote it this way? Yishleima, so we can answer as follows. Leuten Medrash, gate me'eis penei hakodesh. So the words me'eis penei hakodesh, what is this referring to? Of Aaron. It refers to Aaron HaKohen. Me'eis penei ha'oval hazeh. Aaron, which is the oval, removed the bodies of his children so that he shouldn't have the pain. Aber al derech hapshat meint penei hakodesh dem Mishkan. In the simple pshat of the reading the words Pnei HaKodesh, it doesn't refer to Aron HaKohen. It refers to the Mishkan. The Fahrt lernt Rashi, as das ist Leila Arviv, die Simche, was ist verbunden mit dem Mishkan. Leila Arviv means don't disturb the Simcha of the Yidden in connection with the Mishkan. That's what Kodesh simply means. So therefore Rashi chooses to bring the analogy of the Kala, which is the Yidden enjoying the Simcha of the Mishkan, and not the mashal that it says in the Medrash to remove the mace in front of the oval, in front of Aaron. So we understand why Rashi brings what it says in the Gemara in Ksubis. Aber al pizeh is noch schwerer, was Rashi is mechaber di zwei. But now this only intensifies the question that we're asking here, why Rashi quotes this as Adam ha'omer lachaveira, that this is the behavior of people, that a person tells his friend, and not that it's a halacha. So Rashi, by doing that, is sort of combining two different things. As das is bedugmas minig, Rashi is quoting this just as being some kind of a custom, not a halacha, like it would be quoted from the Medrash. The Medrash brings it only as a custom because there it's not a halacha, it's just a minig. So in that aspect, Rashi is quoting it like it appears in the Medrash. On Simchas Kala, but on the other hand, Rashi is bringing that the issue over here is that there's a Simcha of a Kala taking place. For dort there's a Sadin. In the Gemara, where it speaks about the Simcha of a Kala, it's not just a minig, it's a halacha. So on one hand, Rashi quotes this as a minig. At the same time, though, Rashi is quoting what it says in the Gemara, which is a halacha. So what's the pshat here in this Rashi? There's another important detail over here that has to be understood in this mashal that Rashi brings. Vibalt, as in demselben Inyan, is Rashi mefarish kanal. Two psukim later, Rashi says, Al ta'arvavu simchase shel mokim. Do not disturb the simcha of the Eibishter. Hat doch gedacht lernen suas achechem eis pnei hakodesh shelela arviv simchase shel mokim. So why didn't Rashi say the same right here, that the point, the reason to carry out the bodies of Nadav and Avihu is in order not to disturb the Eibishter Simcha? Favas lernt do shalela arve v'sa simcha von der Kala. Why does Rashi say here that the reason that they have to carry out their bodies is in order not to disturb the Simcha of the Kala? Was meint bepashtus the Simcha von Yidden? Who's the Kala here in the building of the Mishkan? It's the Yidden that are the Kala. So why over here does Rashi say that the point is not to disturb the Simcha of the Kala? And then two psukim later, Rashi says that the point is not to disturb the Simcha of the Eibishter. Now you may want to answer, but mekanet farenferen. Now we would not be able to give the following answer. Vibalt as Meloi chalaretz kvoide. The Eibishter's glory fills the entire world. Wird doch der Rebbe in der Meis mimokim lemokim gar nicht zuhelfen, als die Simchas HaMokim soll nicht zerstört werden. Der Eibishter ist doch euch da mechutz lamachne. So therefore you may say, when it comes to our pasuk, where it talks about taking out the dead bodies from this place, out to outside the machne and to bury them there, that's not going to minimize, that's not going to take away the disturbance of the Eibishter and his Simcha, because the Eibishter fills the entire world. So moving from one location to another is not going to change anything. So therefore, muss the Far Rashi lernen as das is Shalela Arviv, the Simcha von Yidden, the Kala. So here in this pasuk, where we're speaking about carrying out the bodies, Rashi has to say that the point is only not to disturb the Simcha of the Yidden, of the Kala. So that's here in this pasuk where we're dealing with this subject. When it comes, however, to two psukim later, where the discussion is not to act like an oval, as mezolin ganzen, it oisig sein binyane avelis, that Aaron and his children, that's Elaz and his summer, should not at all act like avelis nowhere, in no location. So then, bavarent as euch simchas hamokim zol nit nesarve werden. So there Rashi could say that this does cause that the Eibishter Simcha should not be disturbed, the fact that they're not going to be acting like Avelim. That's why Rashi there could say that the point is not to disturb the Eibishter Simcha. So this would be a teretz that you would suggest to explain the difference, why here Rashi says the Simcha of the Kala, of the Yidden, and later Rashi says the Simcha of the Eibishter. However, says the Rebbe, this is not a correct answer. Yes, it's true that the Eibishter's glory fills the entire world. But it's simply understood as the joy of the Eibishter in this time is verbunden mit dem Ort, wo auf ihm sagt der Eibishter, v'asili mikdash, v'shachanti b'seicham. Dort is Ashras Ashchine begilui. The Simcha of the Eibishter is taking place in one specific location, here in this place, where the Eibishter says, I dwell there. The Eibishter's Shchine is there begilui. That's the place of the Eibishter's Simcha. Und der Rebbe darf na reisnehmen es achechem eis penei HaKodesh shalela arvev simchase shel makom in Mishkan. So we can still say that the point is to remove the dead bodies of Nadav and Avihu, not to disturb the Eibishter Simcha that's taking place right there in the Mishkan. So why does Rashi say that over here the point is not to disturb the Simcha of the Yidden, the Kala? And only in two psukim later does Rashi say that the point is not to disturb the Eibishter Simcha. Der Biur b'cholzeh. So to answer all of these questions, we need to understand what this whole Rashi is doing here altogether. As the Rebbe pointed out, it doesn't seem to be anything extra or unneeded in this pasuk. The idea of carrying out Nadav and Avihu, to bury them, to remove their tumah, is very simple to understand. There's no extra words in the psukim here. It doesn't seem like it. So what's Rashi answering? And then all the details of how Rashi brings this mashal, why specifically this mashal, and the Adam Ha'ema Lachaveiroi, what's the diuk in all of these details? So the answer here is as follows. Learning dem pasuk, learning this pasuk here, stellen sich gleich zwei Tmias. There are two very strong questions here. Einer in Klalas HaPasuk, there's one very strong question on the pasuk in general, und die zweite im Wort Achechem. And another question is on this word of Achechem, carry out your brother. Und der Vater ist Rashi meitig from Pasuk di Werte Su'u es Achechem v'goymer. These are the words that Rashi brings from the Pasuk when he says this pshat. Weil ot di Werte, di klolos ha'amira, from Su'u v'goymer. The question of Rashi is on the general statement of Su'u that the Pasuk is saying here. Und der Wort Achechem, and also specifically this word of Achechem, your brother, zenen shver. These are the words that Rashi is coming to address. So what are the questions here? In Klalas HaPasuk is nit galatik. In the Pasuk in general, it's not understood as follows. Favas darf der Pasuk bechlal der Zelen und dazu noch mit an Arichis. Why does the Torah here have to tell us? And also, with all of the details, in mitten dem Seder von Shmini Lamiluim, right in the middle of discussing everything that happened here in Shmini Lamiluim, wie Moshe hat angesagt, Mishal ve'al Zofen, Kirvu su'u el mechutz machne, und wie danach vayikruvu vayisam. That Moshe tells them, go and carry out your brother to outside the machne, and then the Torah goes on to say that it actually happened, that they came and they carried them out. Why does the Torah here, in the middle of discussing Shmini Lamiluim, have to make this interruption to discuss this, to say that they have to be carried out, and they actually did it? What's the problem? Says Adova hamuva me'elov. Isn't it self-understood? As Mahdi Gufim, for Nadav and Avihu, nit ibegelost in Mishkan, that they didn't leave their bodies there. That they were immediately carried out from the holy place. Isn't it self-understood that that's what was done? Does the Torah have to specify and say that they were commanded to do so, and they went ahead and they carried them out? If it's just for this detail, that the Torah is saying where it is that they have to be taken to be buried, so those few words has to say that they're carried out al mechutz lamachne. But the entire pasuk, the whole arichis of the Torah interrupting here in middle of the story about Shmini Lamiluim to say that they have to be carried out and so on, that's not necessary. Weil derech zeh is nit verstandig dat goshet zu Mishal ve'al Zofen. Now the second question over here is emphasizing when the Torah is saying that Mishal and Al-Tzafon have to carry them out, Su'u es achechem, you're carrying out your brother. As Nadav Avihu is an Ezeir Krevim, it's their relative. Why does the Torah have to emphasize that? Wie bald as es steht schon in der erste Hälfte von the Pasuk, as sie sind Bnei Uziel Doid Aaron, that they're the children of Uziel, which was the uncle of Aaron. Veis Mashain, as is an achechem, self-understood that these are their relatives. Why does the Torah have to spell out again, you're carrying out your brother, you're carrying out your relative? The fun is mashma, as dafke, was is an kreuven, darfen sie heraustragen, Nadav and Avihu. That the Torah is telling you, you know why you're the ones that have to carry them out? Because it's your brother, because it's your relative, therefore you're the one that has to carry them out. Is nicht move on. Aleph, Lamai nafgemine dam pasik, the adgoshe as the su'u goyme darf getan werden durch kreuven. What exactly is the point of saying here that it's the relative, the one that has to carry out? Why? What's the emphasis about this? Beis, favos take, darf sein su'u, darfke durch kreuven. Why is it that their relative, Mishal and Eltzafen, have to be the one to carry them out? Seemingly you would say in the opposite. Zayin de Kreuven, von Nadav and Avihu, von Shevet Levi, since they were their relatives, so they were also from Shevet Levi. So being Leviim, so they have a connection to the Aveda done in the Mishkan. So the Rebbe clarifies, Chach in Pasik is noch nicht der Mond geworden, wegen Avedas Leviim im Mishkan, even though in the Psukim it doesn't yet speak about what Aveda the Leviim do in the Mishkan. Das steht erst in Sefer Bamidbar, it's going to say later in Sefer Bamidbar. Hat aber der Ben Chamish gelernt das in Pirish Rashi. The Ben Chamish that's reading this Rashi here already learned about the Aveda of the Leviim earlier in Rashi. So we know that the Leviim have Aveda in the Mishkan. Und wie bald, als die Leviim haben auch Chelek in Avedas am Mishkan, hat doch mehr Ort, als sie sollen bleiben zu heuren, und in Mishkan, bichdei zu bateilen sich in Simchas am Mishkan von Shmini Lamiluim. So if so, they belong being in the Mishkan, to be available to do the work in the Mishkan, to take part in the joy of the Mishkan. On Yisraelim, it would make more sense to say that other people, Yidden, Yisraelim, they should be the ones that should carry out Nadav and Avihu to outside the Machna. Why specifically should Mishal and Altzafim, being brothers, being relatives, being Leviim, carry them out, become Tamei and carry them out on the Chutz Lamachna? Nachmer, the question is even stronger. Rashi, hat schon früher geschrieben. Rashi himself told us earlier in Parshas Vayechi. Wie Yaakov hat angesagt, als Levi soll tragen sein Oren, shehu asid lasis es Oren. That Levi should not carry Yaakov's coffin out of Mitzrayim because he in the future will be carrying the Oren in the Midbar, the Oren of the Mishkan. Es ma doch als Levi hat nicht getragen dem Oren von sein eigenen Vater. So now, think about it. If Levi did not carry out the Oren from his very own father, the father was medeire später, only because generations later, by Mishkan, is who, so he, and it's actually not Levi himself, gemeint sein Shevet. It's his Shevet, which is Asad Lasis es Aaron, that's going to carry the Aaron in the Mishkan. And so there's the issue of Levi not carrying the Aaron of Yaakov because of generations later, his Shevet carrying the Aaron. Allah has kame v'kame benidden di don. So how much more so in our case? Was es retzach, wegen nit azene nante kreuven. We're not speaking about such close relatives over here that we say that Mishal and Altzafim should carry out Nadav and Avihu. Und in a Zeit von Simche, von Ashras, Ashchine be Mishkan, it's right now a time of great joy of the Shchine coming down in the Mishkan. Volt avade gepasst, as ze sollen sich mishtatev sein in Simchas am Mishkan. It would be appropriate that they should continue participating in the joy of the Mishkan, and not to be the ones to have to go and carry out the bodies of Nadav and Avihu. There should be other people, there should be Yidden that are not doing the Aveda in the Mishkan that should go and carry them out. So why is the Pasuk saying that specifically Acheichem, you, because you are brothers, therefore you're the one that have to go and carry them out? That's the question here. And that's besides the first question that the Rebbe said, that really the entire Pasuk is extra. It's self-understood that they're going to be carried out to be buried, and that they should be carried out not to be left in the Kodesh. Why does the Torah B'chlal have to interrupt with this whole arichis to tell us about the fact that the bodies of Nadav and Avihu were carried out? Mitzad dit zwei shailes is Rashi machriach. So because of these two questions, so this forces Rashi to explain. As Aleph, der inyan von Su'u v'goymer, carrying out Nadav and Avihu, is nit nor tzalib kvura. The point is not just to bury them, or the stam tzalib arois nemen di gufen von Mishkan, or to carry out their bodies from the holy place in the Mishkan. Was mit versteht es, belav hachi. For those 2 points, it would have been self-understood. Nor says azach, was is negeya in dem inyan von Shmini Lamiluim. The Torah is telling us about this because this is relevant to the celebration that's taking place here on Shmini Lamiluim. Beis, das fadet, as es soll getan werden durch Acheichem. And therefore it's demanded that this should be done specifically through the Leviim, through their relatives, their brothers. Rashi mefarish, so to explain this, how this inyan of carrying out Nadav and Avihu is related to Shmini Lamiluim, so therefore Rashi says, as their Su'u is Shaloi la'arve v'sasimcha. This is in order not to disturb the simcha that's taking place here, and Shmini was is vorgekommen in Mishkan b'Shmini Lamiluim. The simcha that's taking place right now, the point of carrying out the bodies of Nadav and Avihu is in order to allow that celebration, that simcha to continue. That's the point of carrying them out. So the Torah is telling us this over here, and with the arichis, because it's not just a side point about the fact that they obviously have to be buried or not to keep the tumah here, but it's about enabling the simcha of Yom HaShmini to continue. Und the Far is a pasuk Meisif Meis Penei HaKodesh, and this is the reason why it says these words Meis Penei HaKodesh. It's not only because of the tumah, wie bald as the Iker da is, as sie sollen sich nicht gefinnen in Kodesh und damit zerstören die Simcha. Kanal Sefalef. The main point is that they should allow the Simcha taking place in this holy place to continue. So this is not just a technical thing that has to be done here in order to remove what doesn't belong, the tumah that doesn't belong here, or to bury them in the right place, give them the right honor, but it's actually part of what's relevant in order to be able to continue the joy of Yom HaShmini. And this itself is the reason why this has to be done through the relatives of Shevet Levi. Warum? Das ist verbunden mit Aveidas HaMishkan. Carrying out the bodies of Nadav and Avihu is related to an Aveidah that's being done in the Mishkan. This is part of enabling the joy in the Mishkan to continue. So it's considered to be a Chelek of an Aveidah in the Mishkan. No, das ist nicht an Aveda in dem Eifen von Chiyuv, Shir, Chayetze Bezeh. This is not an Aveda that is adding to the Mishkan in a positive sense, whether through the songs or whatever else the Levim would usually do in the Mishkan. Nor in dem Eifen von Shlila. It's an Aveda of Shlila, of negating and removing what doesn't belong. A Reissenehmen von Mishkan Sachen, was einem Mesalzel, Mevalvel that is, to der Aveda Kedabai, to remove whatever is disturbing the Aveda to be done properly. So that's also part of the Aveda of the Leviim, to remove the Shlila, to get rid of what's not allowing the Simcha to continue. Val derech, the Aveda von Aromas, Vaitzoas, Adeshen, Amuchutz Lamachne. Just like we find in the Aveda that's done in the Mishkan, there's the Aveda of Karbanis, and then there's also an Aveda of removing the ashes, removing what doesn't belong in order to allow for new Karbanis. So this as well is considered to be a part of the Aveda that belongs to the Leviim being done in the Mishkan on this day, at this moment, to remove what doesn't belong, to enable the joy of the Mishkan to continue. So it comes out, as der Mit hat man nicht mevate gewinnt, die Statfus von Mishal vel Zofen in the Simcha for Chanukas HaMishkan, by appointing Mishal and El Zofen to carry out the bodies of Nadav and Avihu, they are not now being left out from joining the simcha that's taking place. No, they are. Weil mit Areistragen Nadav Avihu me'eis Penei HaKodesh de mit Gufe haben Mishal vel Zofen a Chelek in their simcha. That's their part in the simcha by carrying out their bodies and removing what doesn't belong and removing what's destroying or disturbing, that is, the simcha. So that itself is their participation in the simcha that's taking place. So they have to do it as Leviim. It's part of the Aveda in the Mishkan, and that they are having a part in the Simcha, participating in the Simcha in this way. So we understand why the Torah includes this detail of the story here as part of what happened in the joy that took place in B'yom HaShmini. And we understand why specifically Acheichem, why it's the brothers, the Leviim, that have to do this Aveda. It's part of an Aveda, sort of, to carry out their bodies from Penei HaKodesh. Rashi kennt sich aber nicht bei Gnugenen mit Stam sagen, als der Seuvegeim ist Shleila Arves as a Simcha. However, Rashi can't just simply say that the point of carrying out the bodies of Nadav and Avihu is in order not to disturb the joy. Weil es wird gleich schwer, because then you'll have this question right away. Oib me darf nicht ma'arvev sein die Simchen von Chanukas HaMishkan. If we should not disturb the simcha of the Chanukas HaMishkan, favos hat der Eibishter ma'avrev gewend the simcha und gleich meinisch gewend Nadav Avihu. But if so, we see that the Eibishter did choose to bring the punishment right here and now in the middle of the Simcha, and they did not wait. Und nicht abgewart mit dem Einisch bis nach Shmini Lamiluim. The Eibishter did not wait until after Shmini Lamiluim in order to give them their punishment. So if the Eibishter himself is disturbing the Simcha here in this way, so then that's the Ratzon Hashem at this time. So why are we so concerned about not disturbing the Simcha that's happening in the Mishkan? The Shaila is noch starker, and this question becomes even stronger. Rashi hat schon mefarish gewen in Seif Parshas Mishpatim Kanal Siv Beis as Nada va'aviu va'askenim neschayevu misa. As we quoted before, already at the time of the giving of the Torah, so then they were neschayev misa. Nor le'ratza kadosh baruch hu la'arviv simchas ha'Torah v'himtin le'nada va'aviu ad yoyim chanukas ha'mishkan. The Eibishter did not want to disturb the simcha of Torah then, and therefore they were only punished until later, until this day of Yom HaShmini, when the Mishkan was being celebrated. So what does it come out here? A simchas ha'Torah hat der Eibishter nit gewollt marviv sein. By Matan Torah, the Eibishter did not want to disturb the simcha of the Torah. Aber die Simcha von Yom Chanukas HaMishkan hat ihm nit geart zum marviv sein durch Mrs. Nada va'aviu. The Eibishter did not mind disturbing the simcha of the Mishkan by killing Nadav and Aviyah in this time. Und befragt, als man gefindt bei diesen Keinem, als kedei nit la'arviv simchas ha'Torah, hat man abgelegt auf eine längere Zeit. The Zekanim that were also neschayev misa at that time, they got their punishment much later. And the Eibishter did push it off for a later time. But over here, when it comes to Nadav and Avihu, the Eibishter does not push it off for later than this date of the Yom HaShmini Lamiluim. So this was something that the Eibishter chose to do at this time, even though by Simchas HaTorah the Eibishter chose not to. But today the Eibishter chose to bring about the Einish on them. So wie kann man sagen, how could you say, as the time from Seuve Geimer is Shalela Arve V'Sasimcha, that you have to carry out the bodies from the Mishkan in order not to disturb the Simcha? B'shas that Eibishter allein hot the Simcha ma'arviv gven. If the Eibishter himself chose to disturb the Simcha at this time, so then we'll have to say that the only reason to carry out their bodies is just to bury them, or not to leave the tumah inside. But the point of not disturbing the Simcha, that's something that the Eibishter chose should happen. So how could it be that now we're saying that the point is not to disturb the Simcha? It was disturbed, the Eibishter disturbed it. Of them zogt Rashi. So therefore Rashi says, as al derech hapshat pshuta shel mikra, that when it comes to understanding what's going on over here, why the Torah is talking about this with tarichas and explaining that we do not want to disturb the simcha. So in pshuta shel mikra, the pshat in this is the amira von Moshe to Mishal v'Altzafan seuve geimer. When the Moshe Rabbeinu tells Mishal and Altzafan to carry them out, nitadin, this is not a halacha, like it's quoted in the Gemara in Ksubis, where it brings the mashal of the kala, and there the halacha of the kala is actually a halacha. But here, in the context of this pasuk, it's not a halacha. And Amira and Velacha Moshe gitze yiber atzivi Hashem, where Moshe Rabbeinu was telling them what the Eibishter commanded. Not rather, ka'adam ha'omer lachaveiroi havra meis melefnei kala. It's like one tells his friend, remove the mace from in front of the kala. This is an inyan in anhagas b'nei adam. This is just the behavior of human beings, of people. But this is actually not relating a command from the Eibishter. There was no command of the Eibishter about this. Because, on the contrary, the Eibishter himself brought about this disturbance during this time of the Simcha. Now, the Teva ha'adam is, so what Moshe Rabbeinu was telling them is, ka'adam ha'imel ha'chaveira, it's human nature, as by Simchas Kale, Tutmen, was is nor meglech, as die Simcha soll nicht zerstört werden. You do whatever is possible not to disturb the Simcha. Und der Fahr ist mit Maver am Meis melefnei Kala, bis as me führt der Meis durch an anderer Weg. You take away the mace, and you take the mace on a different route, dich they nicht zu antreffen die Kala, gehen die Glebeis Chasanasa. So the mace should not encounter the Kala on the way to her Chuppah, to her Chasana. Und nicht zu matriach sein, as the Kala soll gehen durch an anderer Weg, and not to cause extra tirche, extra way that the Kala will have to go to her chuppah, to her chasana. That's the human nature. So we're not speaking about the halacha. We're talking about human nature. When a Kala is going on her way, you don't want the levaya and a simcha of a chasana to come together. So the same thing over here when Moshe Rabbeinu tells Mishal and Altzafan to carry out Nadav and Avihu. Afal pi, as the Eibishter hat gebracht, dem einish misa of Nadav and Avihu. The Eibishter did bring the Einish of Misa on Nadav and Avihu inmitten der Simche von Chanukas HaMishkan. in middle of the simcha that was taking place by inaugurating the Mishkan. Das heißt, Azoi is given der Ratzon Hashem, as soll sein an Inyan von Tsar Chulu b'Shmini Lamiluim. This was the Eibishter's choice. So as far as that is concerned, we can't say that there's a command from the Eibishter not to disturb the Simcha. The Eibishter chose, the Ratzon Hashem was, that there should be a Tsar on this time. However, Moshe Rabbeinu himself wanted, as much as it's humanly possible, as the Simcha von Yidden soll nicht zerstört werden, that the Simcha of Yidden should not be disturbed. Und der Rebbe hat gesagt, and therefore Moshe Rabbeinu, he on his own, like one that tells his fellow, Moshe Rabbeinu himself said, to take away the mesim in front of the simcha of the kala in order not to disturb the simcha of the Yidden. As far as the Eibishter is concerned, the Eibishter chose to bring this tsar. There was no tzivi from the Eibishter not to disturb. The Eibishter himself chose to have the simcha disturbed. But Moshe Rabbeinu on his own decided as much as possible to take away the tsar and from the Yidden, as the Rabbi will now explain, as we'll see the continuation over here. Al pizeh zeich verstandig bepashtos, was Rashi git atam auf suugeime shaloila arvev simchas hakala Yidden. Why Rashi gives the reason and explains that the point is not to disturb the simcha of the kala, the Yidden. Nit vira sheichem al tefrol, was es weil alta arvevu simchas shel mokim. There, two psukim later, when it comes to Moshe Rabbeinu telling Aaron and his children not to act with avelos, there it says, do not disturb the Eibishter Simcha. But over here, when it comes to carrying out the bodies of Nadav and Avihu, what does it say? Do not disturb the Yidden Simcha. So what's the difference? Vibalt, so going back to the point that we just explained, Vibalt as misas Nadav Avihu is gekommen durch vateitze eish melifnei Hashem vateichaloisam. The Eibishter is the one that brought out the fire. The Eibishter is the one that brought the death upon them. As der Eibishter hat verguckt auf sein Simche, kedei zum meiner sein Zei bemisse. The Eibishter himself looked away from the joy that was taking place, and he brought the punishment upon them. Is doch nicht scheich zu sagen, as me darf sei zunehmen von Mishkan, kedei nit me'arvev sein simchase shel mokim. So how could you say that they must be removed in order not to disturb the Eibishter's joy? The Eibishter himself brought about this disturbance. This very disturbance is caused by the Eibishter himself. So that's over here, Rashi can't say, do not disturb the Eibishter Simcha. Nor, weil Moshe hat nicht gewollt, ma'arvev sein die Simcha von Yidden. Rather, Moshe Rabbeinu, on his own, decided that he doesn't want to have any continuous disturbance to the Yidden in this Simcha. Hat gesagt, Su'u v'geimer, ka'adam ha'emer la'chaveira, haveres ha'meis mufnei ha'kala. Like one tells his fellow, remove the mace in front of the kala. So this is Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe on his own is saying, remove the mace in order not to disturb the Simcha of the Yidden. That's when it comes over here to removing the bodies of Nadav and Avihu. Which is not the case when it comes to later, two psukim later, where it says that Moshe Rabbeinu tells them, do not act like Avelim. Vas Aleph is nit kadam ma'im ala. Here it's not Moshe Rabbeinu himself saying this, like one speaks to his friend, nor halacha. Was Moshe hat sie übergegeben b'shem Hashem wie alle halachas von Torah. This was a halacha that Moshe Rabbeinu was giving over to them, that the Eibishter commanded that they should not act like Avelim. Und Beis, es redt sich nicht wegen Misas Nadav Avihu. Here we're not talking about the actual death or the fact that you have the dead bodies here of Nadav and Avihu. Nor wie Aaron ubanov Toren et Aroizweisen ken Avelus in Mishkan. Here we're talking about Aaron and his children, that's Allah's and his Somar's behaviors, what their behavior should be like, that they should not act like Avelim. So da is the tam al ta'arvavu simchas shel mokim. So here Rashi gives the reason that the Eibishter commanded, as far as their behavior is concerned, that they should not act like Avelim in order not to disturb the Eibishter simcha. Simchas shel mokim from Chanukas HaMishkan. This refers to the Eibishter simcha and the inauguration of the Mishkan is doch verbunden mit der Avede von Aaron Abanov Ubanov jenem Tag in the Mishkan. What's the Eibishter simcha? The Eibishter simcha is connected with the Aveda that Aaron and his children are doing in the Mishkan. Hatach nit kein Art, as in demselben Tag, sollen sie tan a Peule, was es bestiret, zu Simchasai shel mokim. So here is the Eibishter's command that on this day, here, where the Eibishter has his Simcha in the Mishkan, they should not allow that Simcha to be disturbed any further, and they should continue doing their Aveda. So yes, although the Eibishter himself chose to disturb the Simcha by the death of Nadav and Avihu, that's as far as the death of Nadav and Avihu itself is concerned, and as far as carrying out their bodies is concerned. But as far as the Avodah that has to continue being done in the Mishkan, for this, Simchasei Shel Makayim, there's a command from the Eibishter that they should continue doing their Avodah, and they should not act like Avelim. So over here, Rashi uses the expression Simchasei Shel Makayim, that this was a command from the Eibishter that the Simcha of the Eibishter should continue. So we understand very clearly all the details of why Rashi had to bring this mashal, this whole entire mashal, Ka'adam ha'ayma l'chaveirei, why Rashi specifically says the expression of Ka'adam ha'ayma l'chaveirei, because this is not a halacha. Rashi wants you to understand that this is something that Moshe Rabbeinu himself said in order for the Yidden, their Simcha, not to be disturbed. And the difference, why Rashi later says Simchasei Shel Makayim. So everything is clear here in this Rashi, v'nigeya to what Moshe Rabbeinu was saying here and the Psukim later. Now from here the Rebbe brings and explains that there's something else that we could explain here in the continuation of the Parsha. Was menemt areis von der Mashal ka'adam ha'ayma l'chaveirei haveres hameis milufnei akala. When Rashi says this analogy, that like a person tells his friend, remove the dead body from the kala that's going to her chasana. Punkt wie mashal, just like it is in this mashal, is man doch nit mevatel da avelus. You can't completely annul the avelus that is happening. There's a mace here. Mefirt nor avek the mace from the makom hakala vasimcha. The mashal says, remove the mace, that he should not come in the same route. He should not meet the kala in the same place. There's an avelus taking place, but don't allow that avelus to come and disturb and be in the same place as where the kala is. That's what the mashal means. Al derech zeh binyanenu, the same is also here, as the aninus von Aaron und Bonov is nit bottle geworden. The aninus and the avelus of Aaron and his children was not annulled. Says nor was the avelus hat nit getort ongesend werden in mokem asimcha. It should not be seen, it should not be conspicuous in the place of where the joy is. That's all it means when it says, Haveres HaMeis, that continue doing your Aveda here, do not act like Avelim right over here in this place, or regarding carrying out the bodies of Nadav and Avihu, that here in the place of the Simcha, do not bring in the disturbance of the Avelus. That's all it means. So now, Val Pizeh, wird werden verstandig an Inyan Tamua beYoser in unser Sedre. We can understand something which is very difficult to understand in this week's Parsha. And here the Rebbe is going to bring a new subject that later in the Parsha and connect it back to what we explained till here. B'shas Moshe hat gehert as mod verbrennt dem Seir hachatos shal Rish Chodesh. There was a few different karbanis. There were 3 different karbanis chatos that were brought in this day. One of them was the Seir hachatos of Rish Chodesh. It was Rish Chodesh Nisan. So when Moshe Rabbeinu heard that Seir hachatos was completely burnt and they did not eat it like usually, part of it is eaten, and they totally burnt it. And Aaron Abanav haben es nit gegessen wie die andere 2 chatois, like the other 2 chatois that they brought on that day, the Seir chatos of Nachshon and the special chatos of the Yom Shmini that they did eat, but the Seir of Rish Chodesh they did not. State, so it says, Vayiktzayf, Moshe Rabbeinu was angry about this. Leimor, madua lo yachaltem es hachatos kaima. Why did you not eat this chatos of the Rish Chodesh as well? But then, when Aaron hat him geämpft, Aaron responded and explained to Moshe Rabbeinu, Hey, na yoy mekrivus chatasam goyme lefnei Hashem, vatekreno oisi ke'ele va'achalti goyme hayitav b'einei Hashem. After what happened and so on, would the Eibush to be satisfied if I would eat this carbon chatas of Rish Chodesh? So Vayishma Moshe, Vayitav Beinav. Moshe heard this and he accepted Aaron's answer. Was ist gewähnt Aaron's Zware zum Mechalik sein zwischen die Chatois? So what exactly was Aaron's response to Moshe? It came to the other 2 karbanos chatos. They did eat them, although they were an Einon, which is on the day when a relative passes away. But they did eat them. When it came to the carbon chatas of Rish Chodesh, they did not eat it. So Moshe Rabbeinu was angry about that. There was a command of the Eibishter that they should not act like Avelim, and they should eat everything. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu understood and asked and was angry about. So what was Aaron HaKohen's explanation when Aaron HaKohen said that because this happened, we should not eat the carbon chatas of Rish Chodesh? Is Rashi mefarish as it had getainet that Aaron HaKohen said to Moshe Rabbeinu, Im shamaita bekotchei shah, if you heard the command of the Eibishter regarding those karbanis chatas that were brought especially only for today, for this Yom HaShmini, whether it's the karban chatas of Nachshin or it's the karban chatas that was brought especially for the Yom HaShmini lamiluim. So regarding that, you heard that it could be eaten. But ein loch alahakol bekotchei dairis. You did not hear that when it comes to the carbon of Rosh Chodesh, which is not a special carbon only for today, it's every Rosh Chodesh that you bring this carbon chatos. You did not hear any leniency regarding that, regarding this carbon that's brought in all other generations, always on Rosh Chodesh, that it could be eaten as well. That's the distinction. This kotchei shah and this kotchei dairis. That was Aaron HaKohen's answer. This is the story that it says later here at the end of this whole story of Nadav and Avihu dying here on this day. Is Tamua beYoser, so the question here is very obvious. Oter inyan, as it says da achilek zwischen kotchei shah and kotchei dairis, that there's a distinction between the special karbanis of the day and the carbon chatos of Rosh Chodesh, which is a carbon for every Rosh Chodesh. To make this distinction is a svara pshuta, is a very obvious and logical distinction. Wie kommt es, as Aaron hat es erst aufgetan wie a chiddush to Moshe. So Moshe Rabbeinu has to hear this as a novelty, as a chiddush that Aaron tells him. Why? Und noch mehr, bei Moshe is given as so poshet, as is nidok in chilik zwischen kotchei shah and kotchei dairis. It was so obvious to Moshe Rabbeinu, there's no room to make any distinction between the special karbanos of the day and the carbon chatas of Rosh Chodesh that's always brought in Rosh Chodesh. Biz as when at the head v'hinei seidef, when he found out that it was burnt, is gleich vayiktzef. Immediately he was angry about this. Why did Moshe Rabbeinu himself not think of this distinction? The question goes further. On the other hand, v'balt as Moshe is given as pshitis. As by Moshe is given as pshitis. As kotchei shah and kotchei dairis zenen gleich, that kotchei shah and kotchei dairis should be treated the same, and they should all be eaten. That's how Moshe Rabbeinu understood this. Wie kann das sein? As mit bloi sagen, im shamaita bekotchei shah, ein lechal hakol bekotchei dairis, that as soon as Aaron brings to Moshe Rabbeinu's attention this distinction between the two, hat Aaron bavirik Moshe, he immediately convinced Moshe, und vayishma Moshe, und gleich vayitav beinav, and immediately he accepted what Aaron said. This is very strange. In the beginning, Moshe Rabbeinu becomes angry immediately. He seems to not be paying attention to a simple and obvious distinction between kotchei shah and kotchei dairis. And then when Aaron points out to him this simple distinction, immediately Moshe Rabbeinu accepts it. So what is going on over here in this discussion between Moshe and Aaron? Is there beer in them? So based on what we said before, that there is an Avelis taking place here. There's the Simcha of Yom HaShmini taking place. And yes, we see before that we don't want to disturb the Simcha, but that doesn't mean that the Avelis is completely bottled. So based on this, we can understand what was going on here between Moshe and Aaron. Moshe hat gehalten. It was Moshe's opinion. As der Tam for was Aaron und Bonav haben gemerkt essen die Mincha chulu ba'aninus, the reason why he had the command from the Eibishter that Aaron and his children could eat the Mincha, which refers to these karbanis, even though they were einanin. How do you understand this? Is al derech v'detzivi reshechem al tefro. It's similar to the command that they had not to act with any avelos, bichdei nit zum arvev zayin simchas shel mokim, not to disturb the Eibishter's joy here in the aveda that's being done. Was in them is doch nicht doch chiluk, zi es handelt sich wegen kotchei shah or the kotchei dairis. If that's the reason that we want the aveda to continue and not to disturb the Eibishter's simcha, there's no reason to make any distinction between an aveda that's being done for the special karbanis of the day or the aveda of the carbon Rosh Chodesh, the kotchei dairis of that day. You don't want to interrupt any of the avedas. You want the simcha of the Eibishter to continue through the aveda that's being done. If that's the reason, so of course Moshe Rabbeinu knows of the distinction of these karbanis, but there's no reason to make any distinction. Und der Fahr hat das herausgerufen bei Moshe und vayiktzef. So therefore immediately Moshe Rabbeinu was disappointed about this. Weil durch Sreifas achatas hat man ledas Moshe ma'arviv given simchasei shel mokem. By burning the chatas and not eating it the way the Eibishter said, in order not to act like an avelos in this time period, in Moshe Rabbeinu's opinion, this disturbed the Eibishter simcha. So Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't angry about himself. He was angry about the fact that they disturbed the Eibishter simcha. Auf dem hat Aaron geantwortet. So Aaron's response to this was, Hey, nikrivus chatasam, they brought the carbon chatas lefnei Hashem. It was brought lifnei Hashem. And v'achalti chatas hayom. If I would eat this chatas, hayitav goyim, would the Eibishter be happy about this? So there's an emphasis over here of lifnei Hashem, that the carbon was sacrificed lifnei Hashem. Was the mit hat madgish gewen. What Aaron HaKohen is saying is as follows. As dafke the hakrove is lifnei Hashem mamish. The sacrificing of the karbanis, which takes place on the mizbeach, that's lifnei Hashem, and that cannot be disturbed. That has to continue, and that was done. But not to disturb the Eibishter Simcha does not include the fact that we have to eat our chatois. Yes, it's true that the karbanas are eaten inside the curtains of the Azara, the karbanas are not eaten on the mizbeach or even near the mizbeach necessarily. So the fact that we're not eating the karbanas the way we usually would, that does not disturb the Eibishter Simcha. We only have to be sure to continue the avodah which is done lifnei Hashem on the mizbeach. Is given be'ikeh leben the mizbeach. The joy of the Eibishter was the avodah that's done by the mizbeach. Dort was is given vateitze eish milifnei Hashem. That's where the fire came down from the Eibishter on that time on the mizbeach. V'yeshleimar as the far hat sich die Simcha von Chanukas HaMishkan ausgedrückt in dem Riboy Karbanis ala mizbeach. This is the reason also why we see that the Simcha of the Eibishter by the Chanukas HaMishkan was expressed by the fact that there were many Karbanis brought in connection to this. On this day and on the following days, all the Nesiim brought their Karbanis. The main Simcha of the Eibishter is the Karbanis that are brought in the Mizbeach. Und wie bald as the aninos is nit bottle geworden. But now, on the other hand, as we explained earlier, the aninos, the avelos and the aninos was not completely annulled. Es ist nur, was man tornet a reisweisen kein avelos b'mokaim hasimcha. You can't express that avelos in the place of the joy. Haver milifnei hakala, like the analogy that Rashi brings, that the mace, the levaya, should go on a different route, not in the same place where the kala is going. Hat Aaron geteinet, so therefore Aaron's claim was, as das was Martin angesagt, alta arve vus im chosse shel mokaim, this that he was told that do not disturb the Eibishter Simcha, is this nar legabe the avedis was werden getan lifnei Hashem leben dem mizbeach. That only pertains to the aveda done on the mizbeach itself. Aber nit benegeya achilas kachim was is nar toich hakloim. And it does not apply to the eating of the karbanis, which is not lifnei Hashem. It is inside the curtains of the Azara, but it's not lifnei Hashem. So regarding this, the reason of eating these karbanis, if there was any command to eat these karbanis, it has nothing to do with the inyan of not disturbing the Eibishter Simcha. That's only pertaining to the Avodah done on the Mizbeach. Was die Minche und die andere zwei Chatois hat man gemerkt essen baninas. Now the fact that there was a command that regarding the other two Chatois, they are allowed to eat them. So in Aaron's understanding is this nit kedei shalei la'arvev simchas shel mokim. This was not related to not disturbing the Eibishter's joy. Nor says astam hayrasha, that was a separate Hayra, that was a separate instruction of the Eibishter for the time that they should eat those karbanis. The reason was not about not disturbing the joy here. It's a separate inyan. Therefore, Aaron HaKohen says, if so, we can make a simple distinction. Im shamaita di hayra b'kotche shah, ein l'cha lahakal b'kotche dairis. If you hear this instruction regarding the special karbanis brought for this day, how could you compare it to the carbon of Rosh Chodesh, which is brought in all generations? So Moshe Rabbeinu's understanding was that the reason they have to continue eating their karbanis was part of the inyan of not disturbing the simcha. So there's no room to make any distinction between one carbon and another carbon. But in Aaron's understanding, not disturbing the simcha only pertains to the mizbeach, to the karbanis sacrifice of the mizbeach. The command that they could eat their karbanis, that's a separate inyan. That's Hayras Shah, nothing to do with not disturbing the simcha. If so, that Hayras Shah should be limited only for what is special for this day, but not for the regular carbon Rosh Chodesh that happens to be brought on this day as well, like every other Rosh Chodesh. So this is the explanation of the discussion between Moshe and Aaron. Now the Rebbe concludes the Sikha here with a powerful lesson that we can take from the first point that we were discussing in the Sikha about Mishal and Altsafan, being Achechem, a relative of Nadav and Avihu, and being from Shevet Levi, they are the ones specifically that have to carry out the bodies of Nadav and Avihu from the Mishkan. Eine von de viele Heirais, was man kann herausnehmen von dem Pirish Rashi. One of the many lessons that we can take from this Rashi is as follows. Es ist Yedua, was der Rambam schreibt. It's well known what the Rambam says. As jeder eine kann sein bedugme zu Shevet Levi. Every person could be similar to Shevet Levi. Durch dem, was Nodva Ruchai, if he has within him, from his spirit, to be like Levi, which is Lihibadl, Lamed, Lefnei Hashem, L'sharsei, V'loivdoi, to separate and to stand in front of Hashem, to serve the Eibishter, Uparak Mal Tzavoirei, and to remove from on top yourself all the other calculations and matters that go on in the world, and to dedicate yourself completely to serve the Eibishter. So everybody can be like a Levi. Now one would think to himself as follows. He's already on a darga of a Levi. Yonachman is Kaddish, Kaddish, Kadoshim, V'yiyah, Hashem, Chelke v'nachlase. The Rambam there concludes that you'll be like a Levi and you'll be completely sanctified. Kaddish, Kadoshim, and Hashem becomes your inheritance. Darf sich vernehmen, blois mit inyanim from Teva Kedusha. So when you're on such a level, you should only have to occupy yourself with matters within the good, within holiness. When it comes to matters that pertain to separating from things that are prohibited, so a person will claim, don't disturb me with these matters that are not within holiness. Take for that other people, Yisraelim, simple people. They occupy themselves with such kind of matters. Of them is the Hira, so here the lesson in this parasha is as Adarabah. On the contrary, Vibalt as Haveres Ameis Mulfnei Kala, to remove the bodies here from in front of the joy of the Yidden, of the Kala, is Negeya in the Simchas HaMishkan. This is also relevant to be able to continue the Simcha of the Mishkan. Is das an Inyan in Avedas HaMishkan? It's part of the Aveda in the Mishkan, was darf getan werden durch Achechem Leviim Dafke. And it should be done through Mishal and Alzafen, through Leviim. Don't just bring some Yisraelim to do it, but the Leviim themselves also have to take care of this as well. When al derech zeh en avedes kol echad ve'echad zu machen the Welt a Mishkan v'dire lo yizbarach, and the same is also true as far as making the entire world into a dwelling for the Eibishter. Wie bald as the Welt kennet werden a dire zum Eibishten. It's impossible to make the world a dwelling for the Eibishter. Seiden men reinig sich ab shelo yeshum lichloch v'tinov chas v'shalom. You first have to cleanse yourself. You first have to see that there should be no dirt, and so on. And only then is it possible to bring the presence of the Eibishter. Is oich di aveda, even this aveda of sur meira, when a person has to cleanse himself, a Chelek von the Asiyas Adire Avedas HaMishkan zu welcher es fordert sich a Levi. Even this itself also demands a Levi to occupy yourself with cleansing the world and cleansing the place that it should be fit for the Eibishter to come here. So don't look at this kind of things as dirty work that doesn't belong for a Levi. In order to make the world a place that the Eibishter could dwell there, even to remove what's negative and what doesn't belong, is also part of the Aveda of the Levi to bring the Shechina here into this place. Und durch dem, was mir reinigt up die Welt, durch Sur Meira mitzvahs loisesse, by cleansing the world, which is in general Sur Meira, removing yourself from anything that's negative, all the mitzvahs loisesse. Und misdot misader misaken kelim noim, and only afterwards could you bring in the beautiful furniture, which is durch vasei toiv, the mitzvahs asay that we do. Vertes a pasage dire faren melech malche amlocha makadosh baruch hu, the world becomes the appropriate dwelling for the King of all kings. Was das vet zayin begili, which will be revealed la'asad lave in the future, bebias Mashiach tzidkenu, with the arrival of Mashiach bekarev mamish, speedily in our days.